usually a lot of letters that go in there.
Yeah, I think it's a little late in the game.
It is, I do
to-
too, it is, it's already been voted on.
And so what,
I mean, once again, nothing against any project, but if we're not gonna, you know, railroad or the fairgrounds, and then this is even below that, we're not doing.
This is separate,
Or,
this is separate.
Yeah, this is under capital
Oh, okay.
improvement, under SNPLMA, it's not under the parks, trails, and natural
okay,
areas.
I'm on the wrong category.
Yes, it's a different category.
my only question on the legal part of it is, we have listed here the priorities that were sent to the SNPLMA, and that's what we discussed just now. We're listening to public comment on those three, and I think, my opinion, you can correct me if I'm wrong, the agenda item would be to write a letter in support of one of those three, if we decide to do that, or if we decide not to write a letter about anything, we can go on later on and write a letter for next round about the, I'd like to keep this separate from the parks and
That's the
trails.
problem, that was
is-
his initial,
My initial agenda item was to do exactly that. And we kind of muddied the waters by bringing this into the discussion as well. And that's okay if
But
from a
it's
legal
kind of the-
perspective, we miswrote the.
Yeah, and in order to fit within this agenda item, we would have to, so if the goal is to write a letter about the Trails project, then, but the agenda item says your reconsideration of priorities, so you can prioritize it at some level, write a letter, but if it is on a separate issue, separate from the Heritage Park and the railroad and all that, then that's not what is in this agenda item.
No problem.
yeah, maybe we can revisit that.
Yeah.
And-
I apologize, Nicole, I should have clarified when I
yeah,
sent you.
And
the email.
Elizabeth has a comment.
Elizabeth, go ahead.
I just wanted to say, we have until April 14th, so if we wanna put this on the April 7th agenda with the agenda item to write a letter in support of the Ward Mountain Bike Trail project, we could do that if that would solve the issue and still get it in timely.
Let me send you an email.
Yeah, I think that sounds better, because
Yeah.
where we didn't prioritize it to begin with, and then that's just saying,
And I think they'll bring it forward again, and maybe we can encourage, the stakeholders, to approach the county to write a letter of support.
Again, I don't wanna muddy the waters with their decision here, and I'd like to, I'm okay with this, and I think it's a great idea as we move forward, but during this cycle with the SNP, until we have the actual money in the bank, that we stuck with the items that we discussed. We let SNP move forward with the funding that they're going to do. And then, cause we're gonna have, what is it, number 19 coming up pretty soon, when we can put that on there for future consideration on SNPLMA. We stick to 18, which is what we're on, and that's kind of where I'm at, and so writing a letter until this is absolutely in the bank, we can write a letter as we move forward in March or excuse me, July or August, whatever we do. And I'm just voicing my opinion as we discussed. And that's kind of the direction I would like to do for us, maybe not to write a letter, because that's kind of what the board has just said, they want to stick with what we have in hand, which is the Heritage Park.
Yeah.
And then as we move forward, we can work with Touring Rec and everybody else involved, and I think that Ward Mountain project would be, if we get it around 19, would be one I would absolutely probably favor more than any other one. But that being said, I think we'd like to, and you guys can hear me out or not, but I would just assume not write any, if we decided on Heritage Park, let's just leave it as a mute point and not write a letter.
Yeah, well, then since my motion won't work, I won't make it.
You rescind.
I'm 4 to 1, so I'm not gonna waste time, so let's move
So
on.
let's do this. I'll call for the motion one more time to see if we get a motion after our discussion. And if we don't get a motion, it'll just kind of die for lack of motion. Is that okay?
Yep.
Okay, so that being said, we're on page 4, item 1, a discussion for possible action. They're looking for approval to write a letter or multiple letters to SNPLMA requesting reconsideration of priorities submitted by the Board of County Commissioners. Do I have a motion? Hearing none, I'll ask one more time. Do I have a motion? Hearing none, dies for lack of motion. Okay. Scott's here, and we're still just a minute or or so away from nine, well, we are
Only
nine.
that's-
Scott, are you in a hurry?
If you want me to be.
Come on up and discuss your item on your elected officials, and then we'll go to the 9:30 meeting. I see you back there, so let's take your item, and then we'll move forward.
Thank you, Commissioners.
Okay.
Morning, Scott.
So this one here is page 4, item 1, Sheriff Enright. Item A is discussion for possible action, the approval to send Deputy Lowell Somerville to K-9 training in the amount of $9,992.50.
Thank you, Commissioners. Basically, what happened is we had our K-9 handler resign and took the position with the Marshall County Sheriff's Office. So that basically leaves us with our K-9 with no handler. In order to get that handler certified with the dog, I have to send him to Ball Lake Kennels, which is a 3-week training course. That wasn't budgeted in my budget, of course, this year because we didn't anticipate the loss of our deputy. So in order to do that, the cost of that is the $9,900 to send that 3-week training. So I'm asking the commission to approve that.
Do we have the dog?
Yes, we have the dog. Yes.
Okay, anybody got any more questions of Sheriff Enright about the training for the new K-9 officer?
Pretty straightforward. I'll make a motion to approve.
Second.
Motion by Ian and second by Travis. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, none, passed
Thank you.
unanimous.
Thanks, Scott.
Nicole, you got a quick one here, so let's just get you, page 5, item 2A, Nicole Baldwin County Clerk, discussion for possible action, the approval of a request for the resignation from Newtown Council for the removal of Tony Connell due to lack of interest.
Attendance. That's it.
Okay, look for a motion to approve the request for the resignation of Tony Connell.
Move to approve.
Motion by Shane,
Second.
second by Lori, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, none. We'll go back now to our regular time, we're going over, but we are on the 9:30, it's on page 2. 9:30, Nevada Department of Indigent Services. Item 1 is discussion update on the temporary regulations from the Board of Indigent Defense Services, Marcia Riva, Nevada Department of Indigent Services. Marcia?
Good morning. I'm so excited to be here today. I actually am having the opportunity to come out and meet the commissioners. Our department was formed back in November of 2019, but then COVID hit soon after that and we weren't allowed to travel. So this is just such a great opportunity to come here and introduce myself to you and what our department is doing. So today what I'd like to do is just a brief overview of our department and also give you some perspective on the regulations that we've passed and ask for some guidance on who you would like me to work with in the creation of a plan for indigent defense services. So like I said, my name is Marcia Riva. I can have the next slide, please. We're with the Department of Indigent Defense Services, and as you can see, we're a pretty small department, but we're here to give any assistance that White Pine County needs when it comes to indigent defense. Our mission of our department is to provide support to the counties to develop and maintain quality, cost-effective indigent defense systems that meet the needs of the local communities and the requirements of the Constitution and state law. And mainly what we're talking about is the 6th Amendment of the United States Constitution, which says that in criminal prosecutions, the accused shall enjoy the assistance of counsel for his defense. So what is Indigent Defense Services? Indigent Defense Services has a pretty limited meaning. I'm sure that you're all aware because you just made a decision as to who your public defenders would be. But I want to let you know that our definition of Indigent Defense Services is more limited than what public defenders cover. So Indigent Defense Services means legal representation to indigent adults. So indigent means that they're not able to afford a lawyer who's charged with public offense, or an indigent child who's alleged to be delinquent or in need of supervision. But like I said, your public defenders are doing more than that. 432B cases, that's when a child's removed from a home, attorneys are generally appointed. That is not within our purview. Representation of a parent in a juvenile delinquency case, again, that's outside. And involuntary commitments are also outside. That's where a person might have to be held because they're having mental health issues. But these are things under NRS 180 and NRS 260 where public defenders are commonly appointed, but it doesn't necessarily need to be included within your plan. Our department has a board of indigent defense services that been tasked with certain items to create, including the creation of regulations. The chair of our board is Professor Ann Traum, the vice chair is Dave Mendiola, and as you can see, there's a lot of representation from the rural communities on our board. The Board of Indigent Defense Services was required to pass certain regulations, and we provided you copies with the regulations. What we're here to talk about today is the plans for provision of indigent defense services, section 22 through 29, and this is basically the linchpin. We need to decide what does White Pine County want to do and how they provide their indigent defense services and their plan before really any of the other regulations come into play. So how did this all come about? It's important to discuss Davis v. Nevada. This was a lawsuit where the ACLU was involved, and the ACLU plaintiffs challenged the constitutionality of Nevada's practices regarding indigent defense systems in Nevada's rural counties. So rural counties has a pretty specific meaning, and White Pine County was included as one of these rural counties. And just a guess as to how they did this is, these are counties that provide indigent defense services by using contract attorneys rather than having a county public defender office or using the state public defender. That's what these counties seem to have in common. So that lawsuit was filed October 15th of 2018. On June 3rd of 2019, Assembly Bill 81 was passed, which established our Department of Indigent Defense Services. And on August 11th, 2020, a stipulated consent judgment was filed in the district court, which requires our department to comply with certain obligations. So those obligations are, we're required to collect data on indigent defense. Our regulations set forth what data we're looking at collecting. We are required to establish a standard contract. If you look on our website, which I'll talk more about later, there is a contract that White Pine County can use, but you don't have to use it. There are certain regulations that specifically say what needs to be in a contract, and the standard contract gives you some of those ideas, but it doesn't have to be used. You can still use your contract as long as it's approved by our department. The plans need to ensure immediate access to applications for indigent defense services, so when a person is arrested, they have to be given that application immediately to fill out to see if they qualify for a public defender. We have to ensure screening for indigency within 48 hours, so someone has to review to make sure that they meet the requirements, and counsel has to be at the initial appearance. So the first time that person sees a judge, they should have had an attorney there with them. There's also continuing duties that the department was required to establish, and that's duties of client communication and attorney qualifications. And how we're hoping to meet these obligations is to roll all of these things into White Pines County's plan for the provision of indigent defense services. So like I said, the regulations that discuss the plan for the provision of indigent defense services are in section 22 through 29. And you may wonder, where does plan come from? Did we make this up? And the answer is no. Under NRS 260.070, there is a county requirement for annual reporting to the Department of Indigent Defense Services. So the public defenders, whether it be indigent defense providers or county public defenders, have to provide the total number of cases handled to the board, to you. And then you in turn, by May 1st, have to report to us your plan for the next fiscal year, your estimate for the cost of the plan, and the workload of your public defender. So what information the public defenders were giving you. Generally under the statute that's required, or that's due by May 1st, but because this is new, the board has given each county until September 3rd to create their plan. So like we said, the due date of the plans is September 3rd or earlier. Once you get the plan to our department, we'll put it on a board meeting for the Board of Indigent Defense Services for their approval. The purpose again is to create that plan for the provision of indigent defense services as set forth. Can I go back one?
Sorry.
It's okay. As set forth in NRS 260.070. We want to encourage counties to consult with the local providers of indigent defense services. So talk to your public defenders because they seem to know best what's needed for indigent defense services and where things may lacking. And what the ultimate goal is to promote integrity between the attorney and client, freedom from political and undue budgetary influence, and we're hoping to subject the public defenders to the same judicial supervision as a private attorney or a prosecutor. So what needs to be in the plan? This is just some examples, like we said, there's more set forth in 22 through 29. There is a typo on this page. But we have to describe how does White Pine County provide indigent defense services? Are you gonna establish a county office? Will you use the state public defender, or do you use contract providers? Now, currently White Pine County uses contract providers. So discuss the hiring process. How are those contract providers hired? How is White Pine County gonna screen for indigency? How is this gonna be set up? The assignment of cases, if those contract providers have a conflict, how do we decide who gets the cases next? The payment for case-related expenses. Who makes the decision of whether or not they can hire an expert, whether or not they can hire an investigator? These are all things that need to be set forth. And how does White Pine County want to ensure that data collection is being done? And we're hoping that you'll check out our website, dids.nd.gov. We are here to help. I'm here to offer our assistance in creation of this plan. And if you look at that website, you can see there are county resources. There's a tab at the top where you can review other county plans. At this point, the only county plans on there are Clark County and White Pine County. You can see a template for the creation of a plan, and you can also see a model contract if you would like to view that. And like we said, here's our contact information. I've also given my cards to Nicole so that she can pass them out. But what I'm asking at this point is direction of who this board would like me to talk to in the creation of this plan.
Why don't you give us a little lead on this? You're an attorney, James. I mean, we just hired a public defender, so I think maybe some of your input would be helpful.
Yeah, I think Rich Sears would be a good person to be leading up and coordinating with Marcy here on this plan, given that he's the most experienced attorney in the defense right now.
Anyway, opinion? Yeah, thank you for that, James, because I really need your direction. So, district attorney has recommended Richard Sears, who's in our public defender's office, as our contact person, and he'll certainly report back to the board.
Yes, and I did reach out to him. I believe that he is on the phone.
Yeah, he's on there right now.
Richard, you got a comment, please?
Good morning.
Good
Morning.
morning.
I'm certainly willing to participate. That sounds appropriate to me. I understand the issues, obviously, from many years of being involved in both prosecution and defense. So I think that's appropriate and I consent.
Thank you very
Thank
much.
you, Richard.
Thanks, Richard.
Appreciate
Okay,
it.
this was an update as far as the agenda item goes, so no action was taken. We have given you a lead, Mr. Sears, and thank you for your comments and your presentation. Appreciate it very much.
Thank you very
I
much.
have a quick question.
Yes.
Marcy, the board of directors of this, are they an oversight board? Particularly so far as things get submitted, you guys have your meetings and then,
So we have several items that could be submitted to the board. For example, there's complaints and recommendations on our website where individuals do have complaints about the services that they're receiving or as indigent defense services as a whole. They can provide a complaint there and we would take it to the board. The board does have certain requirements that they have to meet, which are set forth in NRS 180.320. Some of them are the creation of regulations, and I encourage you to read through the regulations, to look at it. And if you have any questions, please reach out to me. I'm willing to talk to you at any point in time. This is such an exciting change of where we're going, so I love to talk about this. I don't know if everyone else does as much, but I'm willing, if you have any questions, just reach out.
appreciate it. Thank you so much for taking the time to present this to us.
No problem. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, moving right along. So we're at the 9:45. It's a special joint county commission meeting and fire commission meeting. And let's see, we'll recess the regular county commission meeting and open 9:45 special county commission and fire commission meeting. And the first item on that would be public comment. Is there any public comment on the phone on what we're about to do with the joint fire and county commission meeting? Anyone on the phone line? Anyone in the audience? Yes, George, come forward.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Under agenda item 1C1, you're to consider approval related to revenue agencies and departments for the fiscal year 2022. I did not see a victims fund identified in any of the departments, in any of the departments ranging from the district attorney, the district courts, the sheriff's office, the juvenile division, or economic development. I pay thousands in taxes to support all those departments. I'm a victim and I want equal protection under the law. I want to be compensated for the harm that I have suffered. The taxpayer is not paying for a pretty face. We want accountability. Those that can't do their job need to go. I brought this item to you for years. No answer, and I want an answer. You need to address that. You can't be paying all these fees, all these taxes for all these departments to protect the public, and then when you have someone that has suffered injury, you're turning your back on it. I want that victims fund in there, somewhere. I don't care where. Then you can get the compensation from those that created the problem. You're not doing that now. We want accountability. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there any other public comment in the building before we move on? And then I'm going to open, is there nobody on the phone either, is there? Okay. We're gonna move on then. It's the 9:45 special joint county commission meeting and fire commission meeting. We've done public comment. Can I just put as presented instead of reading each and every department?
Yes.
So on the item, we have discussion for possible action, direction, and approval related to the revenues and departments in FY '22 budget, and as presented to the commission. Okay, and I think we'll turn this part over to Elizabeth.
Alrighty, thank you. And if there's no objection, I'm gonna remove my mask so you can all hear me.
Have at it.
Okay, I'm gonna start by handing out some handouts. These have been on the website, but I did say I'd bring written copies here today, so what you're receiving is an analysis of the estimates of ending fund balance for each fund that we budget within the county. The ones highlighted in purple, lavender, whatever you want to call that color, are ones that are showing a negative projected ending fund balance and will need to be addressed before we get to tentative. The next sheet that you have should be the sheet that is the requested changes for fiscal year '22 for new positions or changes in existing positions. Whoops. There's yours.
Thank you.
I'm missing one for you. Let me grab it. Sorry about that. There you go. The next one after that should be a budget worksheet, which is just a summary of where we are from the where we started, from the department request over to the BOCC preliminary. So what the BOCC preliminary includes are the changes that we discussed during the course of the budget workshops. And then the final report is a budget comparison report that shows you non-payroll expenses only for all funds, and the changes from what the current budget is to what's being requested for next year, with the increase or decrease, the percentage change, and comparative history. Okay, so let me get one more copy of this over here to the district attorney so he can follow along. And Tabitha, if you would put the rest of these to the back of the room, that would be great if the public would like one of these. I'll just give these. This, and there should be one more here. There we go. Thank you. Okay. So, I want to start off with the estimates of ending fund balance as they stand right now. And what I've done is to get our projected ending fund balance is taken the actual fund balance at 7/1/2020, added projected revenues, budgeted revenues, subtracted expected expense, and coming up with a projected ending fund balance for this year. Okay, and so then we have what is currently in the BOCC preliminary budgeted revenues please remember that the revenues have not been updated at this point, and they will be updated. Should receive something tomorrow from the Department of Taxation. It usually shows up late in the day, like 5 o'clock, so that they can meet their statutory deadline. The budgeted expenses include what the departments requested, plus any amendments that we went through as we discussed. And then the ending fund balance, of course, is the calculation of the projected ending fund balance for this fiscal year, plus next year's revenues minus next year's expenses, and then you come up with your ending fund balance. And then that last column shows you the increase or decrease for each fund. Okay, so the funds that we need to focus on that don't meet statutory requirements include the Assessor Technology Fund. The assessor normally will come back after we have a little bit more information on revenues and adjust his numbers so that we stay within compliance of the law. The Recorder's Mining Map Fund, and I believe I can work directly with Martha to get that corrected. I believe that she put budgeted things in this year she won't spend, so her ending fund balance, or this year will be higher than what's being projected. Because I believe she put in for the renovation of her vault, and she hasn't even started that project, and she's asking for that budget again next year. So we just need to adjust this year's budget to reflect that properly. China Springs is to do with juvenile probation, and our assessment is going up on that, and it does not appear as though we will have adequate ending fund balance. It may require that we transfer funds over there to keep that fund whole. However, I do believe that this year's net proceeds of minerals will be good, and we should have adequate. However, if that's not the case, then we're going to have to adjust that budget, especially the revenue side of that equation, because those assessments are mandated. And then the drug rehabilitation program, this is under the direction of Judge Rescue. I will sit down and have a discussion with him on that particular budget. This is a budget that is largely grant funded, but also has some other fees and assessments that come in through drug court that support it, but we are projecting that we will be overrunning that ending fund balance. So I will work out with him on that. The Justice Court House Arrest fees, we may have to increase that transfer over. I think we budgeted $2,500, but I think we may have to increase that by a couple thousand just to be on the safe side and keep that program whole. The District Court admin fees, this is another one like Martha's where there's stuff budgeted in this year, and I don't think they're gonna spend it all, but I wanna have that discussion with the judge before we go ahead and take any action on that. And so that is, those are the funds that I will need to look at. I will work directly with the elected officials involved in each one of those, and I'll keep my eye on China Springs, and we'll bring back a recommendation after we get revenue projections coming up here soon.
Travis?
On the general fund, Elizabeth, just off the top of your head, if you know, what's the ending fund balance where we would be at that, whatever it is, 20-25% number?
Okay, so you'd have about $2 million, and if we look at the total expense in our general fund, and that is excluding the $8 million we have in there for net proceeds of minerals. So, because we're showing a calculated end fund balance of $10 million, but of that, $8 million is reserved for net proceeds of minerals, mitigations. If mines close, we have money to deal with that issue. So that is, and so if we look at, give me just a second here to get to that page. I did not do the precise calculations, but I believe. We're looking at a total of 18 million in projected expenditures for next year. And so that's gonna be, what is 2 divided by 18? Huh? Yeah, there we go. So that would be where we'd be at about 11%.
We need to get to 25?
That is what your resolution says. Now, I wanna remind you that I have, I believe, and I reported this to you, that I have left $2.8 million in transfers out to SB 74, which is a big chunk of that. That, I said I would update once we knew what the revenues are and what that looks like. So, we're taking it down quite a bit from where we are, but a huge portion of that $3.6 million decrease is that $2.8 million. That's scheduled as a transfer out. As we near the end of the project, obviously, we're not gonna need that much, but I wanna see what they're projecting for next year before we make any final decisions on transfers. Or at least that would be my recommendation to you. Okay?